pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.
Little bit surprised at the way that Minnesota attacked our offensive line. If you could just kind of walk us through what you took away from this game, what were our biggest hurdles? Was it play calling? Was it the offensive line? Was it a combination there of, both of those? I guess give us your rundown of what went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot of different factors. It takes two to tango. So I feel like Minnesota getting Van Ginkel back helps them a lot. Also, it must be said that the hybrid inside linebacker, outside linebacker, Eric Wilson for them, essentially he's like their Derek Barnes, I would say. He played a whale of a football game, and whether he was lined up at outside linebacker, traditional edge rusher, or inside linebacker, they definitely made a point to attack the pass protection up the middle. I don't know about you guys, but watching it live, you had this sense that they were using, 6 or 7 or 8 different blitzes to attack the pass pro, and then you get the film, and that's not the case. I mean, it's really like 3 different ones they're using, and not really much else. I mean, occasionally you had some anomalous stuff that you would consider the fourth or fifth category, but generally they were bringing 1 or 2 inside linebackers up the middle and dropping both outside linebackers, edge defenders, as most people refer to them, out in coverage. And it just seemed like the Lions had no answer for it. I have a comparison point as a fan. The frustration that Lions fans are feeling and felt while watching that game, I think, is almost identical to how the Ravens felt years ago. We had a terrible team in 2021. We went down to Miami on a Thursday night football game, and Brian Flores was calling the defense for Miami. Some people may remember this. They run zero blitz like 34 times against Lamar Jackson. We had a terrible offensive line. And I think Flores, for better or for worse, whatever people want to say about him, if you've got a weakness or something structurally that perhaps he can exploit, he's just going to stay with it. He doesn't seem to me to be a guy who's needlessly going to deviate from what's working. They were able to stop or slow down the run game, and then he was able to get to those blitz situations that cause problems. So I wonder about some predictability elements. Yes, I do, in terms of run and pass, but I can't really put my finger on that and say anything definitive. I don't know. How did it feel to watch the game? It had to be. I've been there twice now against a Flores defense, and Lions fans. You've really been spoiled in the last 2 years against Flores, because this is kind of what he does against some teams, and unfortunately, it happened to Detroit on Sunday.
Well, I can tell you from sitting in the stands, I mean, I was obviously I wasn't happy. I started to key in on the sidelines to see, hey, was Calvin Shepard talking to the guys? Was Hank Fraley trying to get these guys, riled up and try to figure out a plan? Where was David Shaw? Was he communicating from Johnny Morton? And look, I don't know what the conversations are on the sidelines, but I just didn't see enough from what I've seen in past seasons where you always see those images when you watch from home on TV where you've got the coach surrounded by all the guys and they're kind of going through film or the pictures, right? Not film, the pictures. And I don't see that this year as much as I've seen in years past. And I'm wondering, with Johnny Morton being up in the box and Shaw being the main communicator, is that part of the problem? What is the answer? I thought while I was sitting there, like, when are we going to go to more 7-man protection? Dan alluded to the same thing in the press conference yesterday. Could you kind of walk us through, because you can speak to a much higher level than I ever will. So the 7-man protection on why we were not utilizing it, what was prohibiting us from using it, and would it have made more sense to go maybe with 3 or 4, 3 or 4 offensive threats as opposed to 5 on every play, or the ability to have 5, maybe dropping a tight end behind the line of scrimmage and using them as an H-back as opposed to whatever the hell we were doing because it wasn't working,
Yeah, some of those stunts that Flores and many teams run, they have an add-on option. I think you see 2 examples of it with Blake Cashman, where one of the inside linebackers is on a predetermined blitz, meaning it's hard coded. He's going to blitz no matter what. And then Cashman, or in other cases, some other players, is, I call it a read out blitz, meaning basically if you read a certain thing, then you're blitzing, right? So sometimes you have this add-on element to the defense that if you protect with six, then they'll rush with five. I'm not discounting what you said, at all, Will, but there is, I think, some layers to what Flores does in terms of the reads for his guys, whereby whatever you have to protect, he's going to be -1. So if you protect with seven, excuse me, he's going to bring six. If you protect with six, he's going to bring five. Hope, does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense. So
Yeah,
it's just a game of chess, and I think that's where you have to. John Morton has to go up a level, and
absolutely.
he has to disguise it a little bit better if you can. I mean, you can disguise. Look, they're disguising everything out of 11 personnel, but we've seen it now for many years, and every team is doing it. Where they're just trying to disguise everything. Same thing for the defense. They can disguise all of their looks to make it all look the same. And I think that's where Jared Goff does an excellent job at making the calls. I mean, he killed a lot on on Sunday. It didn't help the fact because they kept getting Gibbs
Right.
isolated, right? But I guess my biggest question is, okay, if you're gonna be the -1 all the time, if that's just how you operate, why didn't we put an H back there? Why didn't we put Brock Wright back there? Why didn't we bring in Skipper and drop him behind there just to be able to give Goff an extra quarter to a half a second?
Yeah.
Does that really open up the defense to say, okay, now they're passing the ball, or you mean you don't have to pass the ball, but 37 times
Definitely.
is about 12 more times than we expected out of Goff on Sunday.
Yeah. Definitely put Detroit's offense in some predictable situations. And I think, just so unfortunate the fumble by Montgomery, who's been such a great player, great story in Detroit. And Lions haven't converted a 3rd and 10 plus at all this season. And they run the ball on, I think it's 3rd and 14 or third, it might be 3rd and 13. I'm not sure, but he's approaching the first down, or maybe he's right at the line, and Blake Cashman forces the fumble. Their activity level on defense just surpassed the activity level of the Detroit's offense on that day. I don't think it would be the same in a rematch, or when they do rematch. I don't even know if it'd be the same if they played this Sunday. Just the you had the convergence of things. Number one, I think the Vikings had a great game plan. Number two, they were very motivated. I think there was an extra element of motivation from Flores, being that look at the numbers Goff put up against him the last 4 games, right? So there's some pride there, I'm sure. And when they get Van Ginkel back, he's a very versatile guy. I think many teams, look, the Ravens wanted him, the Lions wanted him. I don't mean their front offices tried to sign him. I mean their fan bases, right? I remember Lions fans wanting that guy, Ravens fans wanting that guy. I did a video on him, and when the Vikings got him, I remember thinking to myself, "Oh man, seriously, like he was a very underrated player coming out of Miami." And in my opinion, he's a big part of their defense because he drops out in coverage extremely well, plays screen. That play where Khalif Raymond goes in motion, knocks him down, I think is a designed play for Van Ginkel. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Will?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think I do.
Yeah. I think that play, this is me going on a whim here, but I somewhat educated. I think they put that play in that blocking scheme for Van Ginkel because Van Ginkel was so destructive against screens. And sure enough, Raymond knocks him down, and the screen to Gibbs ends up literally a yard and a half from him. Would you like Gibbs to maybe widen out a little bit? Yeah, that's easy to say, but the design of the blocking scheme oftentimes necessitates that he be in a certain location. And it just so happens that Van Ginkel was on the ground there. Just shocking to see those two plays. The pitch to Montgomery that really is going to be a first down, and Cashman forces the fumble. I think it's 17-14 at that time. And then McCarthy scores on the 3rd down scramble, 4 or 5 snaps later. I'll talk about that in a little bit more in a minute if you want. But then combine that with plays like the screen, their activity level, even as a Lions fan, you just have to admit they were playing at a much higher frequency than Detroit's offense. And Morton has to be the person that you look at and you say, you've got to fix this. It is his job. Do I think it's all his fault? No, I don't. I actually think that Hank Fraley and the offensive line guys needed to have some better solutions for the things that you look at. I look at three different pass post situations where both inside linebackers blitz and the center Glasgow is dealing with a nose tackle. So real, and I actually talked about this in a video I put out yesterday. Basically, end up with a 3-on-2. The two linebackers and a nose tackle against the center and Gibbs. Regardless of the quality of Gibbs's pass pro, from a snap by snap basis, he's not going to win that matchup. You're at a 3-on-2 deficit, right? Whereas on the edges, on those same plays, you'd have guard tackle blocking one guy on both sides. So it's a 4-man rush or 5-man rush, excuse me. And you're pass proing with 6 guys, but they've manipulated the pass pro scheme. In my opinion, it seemed like Flores was setting the front wrong, meaning he was pushing the one technique if it was an underfront or the 3 technique if it was an overfront. He was pushing that guy to the wrong side in downs that were passing downs. And I wonder if maybe the Lions shouldn't have run the ball on some of their 2nd and 8s. I know that's an unpopular opinion and it sounds ridiculous, but you have to get the run game going, I think, to deal with that Flores defense and how coordinated they are and all the chaos. I think you've got to run the ball, whether it takes 30 carries or 35 to get to 120 yards. I think you've got to do that because you can't, like as you said earlier, you can't end up throwing the ball 40 or 37 times in this case. You're just giving them too many opportunities to exploit your pass pro.
Yeah, 37 dropbacks for Jared Goff is not the answer. When I was doing some mock-ups, or had some conversations prior to the game, I thought Goff was going to throw the ball about 24, 25 times. I mean, his average, if we're putting it up 27, 28, we're pretty comfortable there. And the fact that it goes above 30, I mean, the idea, at least from the metrics that I've tracked, is you put the ball up 30 or more times, you're probably going to throw an interception. And that's why the Lions, I think, by and large, have tried to stay under that number and try to run the football, try to be a little bit more balanced. And this game was anything but balanced. We got behind early. We started to throw the ball, but that's probably a bigger question for me, Derek, is what happened to the balance in this offense? It just seems like
Yeah.
it's all over the place. There's no rhythm. These guys don't look like they're having fun. It looks like work to me now and not fun. And before, these guys were laughing and joking and had that cocky energy, that good energy that they felt like they could just beat anybody. And right now, you look at them and they look like, I don't know if I can win. I don't know if I can beat my man. I don't know if this is the right call. Is John Morton putting these guys in a situation to succeed or not succeed? And what needs to change there, if anything, from coordinator, play calling? What would you do if you were the head coach right now? What would be the first thing you would fix?
Some of my answer is speculative, to be honest with you. I don't know this to be true, but I suspect, that there's some data by possession. And what I mean is, Gibbs is starting the game, generally playing the whole first possession, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point they go to Montgomery, second possession, third. Maybe some of your listeners or yourself has better data than I do. I don't see many situations where Gibbs is playing 3 or 4 snaps in a row, and then Montgomery comes in for 3 snaps, and then Gibbs. I would like to see that because I suspect that there is some data, whether it's run pass data, whether it's directional, dealing with Gibbs and Montgomery. I don't know, but all I know is like Jahmyr Gibbs is a superior talent. And, this even started in the Packers game. Remember, he had like his first 9 touches in the Packers game was like 20 yards or something. We've seen that dynamic play out with Gibbs at times in 2025. I'm not saying that he's not playing well. I'm not saying he's not producing when he's given time and space. There seems to be something defenses are picking up on. And, I don't know how the Packers would have picked up on it in week 1 with a new play caller in Morton. I think it's a simplistic mindset to just say, we're going to have Gibbs for the whole first possession, and then we're just going to go odd, even the whole time.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some rotation, even one snap to the other. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is happening more than my perception or my memory recalls.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that, your level of thinking is what a lot of fans are thinking is why are we so damn stubborn, is my take. I feel like we get a little bit too stubborn at times. Um, you do need to mix it up, right? Part of it's tempo, right? Tempo's huge in this game. You know, if you're running Gibbs and he runs, you know, I'm just gonna throw numbers out there. He's running 22 miles an hour, and you know he's hitting the hole at you know a certain level and a certain speed and a certain quickness, and it's kind of like you know a pitcher. He throws a fastball, you know, high and tight, low and outside, and then bang hits you with that curveball that just you know brushes your chin and ends up down in the mitt. That's kind of what using these guys is all about. You want to throw a changeup. You need to throw, you know, a knuckle curve. You need to put in a slider every once in a while. And just by changing your running backs does that. You switch up the tempo, you switch up the speed and the you know the way that these guys hit a hole, a split second is just enough. You know, you hit
Yeah,
that hole and you're split second faster than that linebacker, and that's just enough to find a crease, to find daylight, to scamper for 10, 12 yards. I just replayed the David Montgomery fumble, and that was a hell of a play by, I think it was
yeah,
Cashman, right? Hell of a
yes,
play by
yeah,
him. I think it was a crossbody, you know, crossbody chop that he popped it. I didn't see that he popped it from the bottom left because the ball was to the outside, left arm. It looked like he came across the top and did it.
wow.
But maybe he did. Maybe he punched it from behind because the ball went forward. Um, that
He's
is,
an extremely underrated football player.
oh,
He
for
has
sure.
been from I think he was at the Texans, I believe. He was very
Yep.
underrated there. There's just that's a tough group over there on defense, and I think they're proud. They were embarrassed the week before against the Chargers,
Hmm.
where they give up 36 or 37 points, and they came in with a great game plan. I think it all starts that defense to me. It's divergent at some point. If you can run the ball successfully, I think their ceiling is a little bit lower in terms of what they can hold you to. If they limit or outright stop your run game, like occurred on Sunday, I think their ceiling levels up 2 or 3 levels
Mm.
above, and because Flores is, he's an extremely intelligent and prepared guy. Number one. Number two, his system is a little bit unusual. I have a theory. It's a working theory. I haven't watched enough film. I will not be able to watch enough film until the off season to confirm it, and I'm not sure I'll be able to explain it well. Goff is tremendous at recognizing things pre-snap,
Hmm.
and then knowing on this particular pass play with these routes, the coverage I think they're going to be in, this route will be open. Sam Darnold actually said something, I think maybe Sunday night late, or maybe it was Monday. I've lost track of the days at this point. He said something like, if I know the coverage, I can move off of my first read quicker because I know it shouldn't be there. So moving from read number one to read number two, or even to read number three, can occur faster, and you can look like a smarter player when you know the coverage. Let's do it this way: if you told Golf the coverage pre-snap and he knows the routes, it's over. It's over.
Yeah.
It's good. You're talking 90, 92% completion percentage. I think what Minnesota did, and I've tried to explain this twice, and I think I'm 0 for 2. I think they actually showed Golf information 2 seconds before the snap intentionally. And here's what I
Mm.
mean. I think they I think they presented him with a look that maybe he would know the coverage for, maybe he may not. And I believe once Detroit has committed to snapping the football, whether it's a play clock running down or what have you, a safety and or a linebacker would move. And in my opinion, they were intentionally trying to show Golf, you don't understand what coverage we're getting ready to play. I think they were trying to use the opposite side of the coin that Golf usually has, whereby he knows the coverage in the 2 seconds before the ball is snapped. And I think I've said this before. Typically, post snap, Golf isn't reading or processing, he's confirming. And I think Minnesota, this is a theory, so I could be way wrong, and there's no way for me to prove it right, but there's also no way for someone to prove me wrong. Um, I think Minnesota was interrupting his pre-snap to post-snap transition. That's usually confirmation in the final second or two before the snap. That safety bailing out of there, or sometimes a safety bailing out and a linebacker sliding over to make it look like it was going to be man, and then it still ended up being zone. I think they intentionally gave Golf some pause or some interruption in his mental processing. I've tried to explain it now 3 times. I probably need to stop. I don't think I've done a good
No,
job of
I
it, but
I got it. So I get it. And I look, that's super smart. If that's what they're doing, It's like, and this is going to be a terrible analogy. I mean, it's
We'll be
like
0 for 4 here then collectively.
it's like playing a game of poker, and you know you're shown exactly what cards are going to be dealt. You just don't know and who's going to get what. You know,
Right.
so hey, all of these cards are going to be in this deck, and all of these cards are going to go out to these 5 players, but you're not going to know who's going to get what. And so they show them the flop, you know, at the very beginning, and then they tuck the cards back in and deal them out. Yeah, that's smart.
I'm not a
It's,
poker player, but I like it. I mean, I
I,
understand the game.
I,
It just
yeah, I
it to
just,
me, the 4th time I saw it, I thought to myself, "Why would you give Goff information?"
yeah,
But the timing, you know, they're at home, so it's not like the guard has to tap the center in order for the ball to be snapped. So there's no indication for the defense that the ball's going to be snapped, right? You know, we don't know as fans, and that's, you know, ultimately what I am, even though I try to analyze the game the best I can. We don't know what pre-snap indicators these defenses have. I think there might have been some run pass tendencies that they picked up on somehow. I don't know how. And B, I think they were playing a game within a game, maybe even within a game with Goff that he'll never talk about in terms of what Minnesota was doing just before the snap to actually give him information that allows him to not confirm post snap. And, you know, again, it's a theory. Sorry, I wasted 3 or 4 minutes of everybody's time explaining it. But the 4th time I saw it in the first half, I thought to myself, shit, how would he process this if he knows he's wrong right as the ball's being snapped to him? Now he's actually trying to read and process the coverage instead of just confirm. Oh, that guy's there. Bang, St. Brown. Things didn't look smooth. They looked interrupted or disrupted. And to my discussion point earlier about a divergent type of result with Minnesota, if you can run the ball more consistently, you're in less of those situations that we just talked about. And ultimately, that's what needs to look. I've said to Ravens fans already, I'm like, if we don't run the ball well against this Vikings defense on Sunday, we're going to be in an absolute war with that team. And nobody believes in me in Baltimore. They don't believe me. They think I'm Mr. Negative, which I might be. But if you can't run the ball somewhat successfully against the Flores defense, he's going to put you in pure, you know what, in terms of trying to process things. And that's, you know, that's what happened to Golf, unfortunately. And that's, he didn't throw any picks, but, you know, I think we can tell he wasn't smooth, sacked 5 times, hit 11 or 12 times overall. You know, very, very unusual day for the Lions offense and for him. And Lions fans should be frustrated with Morton. I am.
I think I just found a play that you were while you were saying that. I went back and looked at the end of the first quarter, or no, I'm sorry, early in the first quarter. 12:56 left on the clock, 3rd and 4. We're at the Minnesota 40, and you can clearly see the right side of the defense. They're coming in, they're showing blitz, and then Goff does something. They send Gibbs out in motion, and then everyone kind of resets. The defense goes back, and then they come in again, and then they get more active on the left side of the defense. Goff kind of resets again, and then he hikes the ball, and he ends up having to run a little boot out, and the play went for nothing. So
Third down.
yeah,
Third down or
third
second
down, yeah, yep, 12:56, third down, end of the first. I'm sorry, yeah, 12:56, 3rd and 4. So very, very interesting.
Got
While
it.
you're saying that, I mean, I know defenses do a little bit of that stuff, but to your degree of what you're saying here, adding that extra layer of confusion and chaos, that's what O'Connell's built this defense on, is chaos, and they do a great job at it. Um,
This is Flores.
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
Flores. I'm sorry,
This is
Flores.
look. No, no. I mean, I get into it a little bit in my Lions Discord, like, and I understand that Lions fans have familiarity with O'Connell that I don't necessarily have because I don't consume, you know, Lions content outside of my own and listening to yours sometimes, you know, when I can on YouTube, like I'll have it on up on a second screen just to play it so you
Hmm.
get another view, you know, because I understand how the game works with YouTube. It's a POS organization and structure designed to, you know, to keep people down like us that are working our ass off. So, but in any case, I am not one of those that just by default thinks that O'Connell is one of the top coaches in the league. Like, remove Brian Flores from that organization
Oh yeah.
and see what it looks like with some other above average to good NFL coordinator. He's a different kind of guy, the experience that Flores has. He's seen everything and been around the game for a long time. I think whether he'll be a great head coach or not at some point, I don't know. He's the type of guy I look at and I'm like, man, I wish we had someone like that in Baltimore. The players, Will, it looked like there was 12 guys on the field on
Yeah,
defense sometimes.
it certainly did.
And
It certainly did. So let me ask you this. The biggest questions, I mean, just going back and just thinking about the game defensively at times, it seemed like Minnesota, and I'll have to apologize, I don't have a ton of notes because I got home really late last night, but it just seems like at times throughout the game, man, Minnesota missed out on a huge opportunity. I think it was like 3rd and 6 or something like that, and we end up going in single high safety, man defense. They had one-on-one opportunity with Justin Jefferson, and they ran the ball. Not only was that a very gutsy call by Calvin Shepard to run, man defense in that situation, I want to say it was near midfield. So they had, all over the place that they had plenty of field that they could have worked with. The Vikings I'm talking about. But the Lions defense yesterday, some gutsy calls at times. I think they played fairly well the majority of the game. The first quarter was not great, but I think the rest of the game was pretty solid.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Do
2
you
consecutive touchdowns to open the game. You have to be constructive and evaluate it realistically. Over the course of the whole game, I totally agree with you. They played well.
yeah.
Particularly, Jack Campbell played. He's playing at all pro level for the film that I get to watch.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got Roquan Smith for the Ravens, Ernest Jones the fourth for the Seahawks, and Jack Campbell for the Lions as Mike linebackers, I'm talking about.
Sure.
I'm a huge fan of Roquan. Don't get me wrong, but for what I've seen in 2025, Jack Campbell's playing better than both of those guys by far.
Wow.
And so he's playing a spectacular brand of football. I thought Terrion Arnold played well
You had a good
on
game.
Sunday. I've got about 6 or 8 plays queued up of his for a video, hopefully later tonight. I'll tell you what disappoints me is a couple of situations where you would not expect Detroit to get exploited by something. The scramble by McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, Anzalone normally makes that tackle. He normally and McCarthy just totally erased the angle that Anzalone had. I think Anzalone underestimated his speed and athleticism. McCarthy just if you watch that play one time and you say we're going to put those 2 guys in that position 10 times, how often would you expect McCarthy to win based on what we saw? You would have to say 9 out of 10 just
Mm.
based on the way that it worked out on that play. Now, we know that Alex Anzalone is a far better athlete than people perceive. And put myself in that bucket as well. When the Ravens came to Detroit, I think 2021, and before that game, I watched the film and I'm like, we can pick on this guy. And then after the game, I was like, whoa, I totally underestimated him. Super athletic, great motor, really good in space. Not in that moment. Now, that moment was created, or that space, excuse me, was created by, I think, a poorly timed stunt between Hutchinson and Muhammad. Very similar. I believe it was against the Bears in 2023. I think Detroit lost up there in Chicago in their trip to Chicago late 2023, maybe week 11 or 12 or 13,
Mm-hmm.
where Hutchinson dives inside and I think Fields scrambles around to his right, the right-hand side for the offense. And Hutchinson, I think, even talked about it later. Like, I have the freedom to do that. I don't think this was freedom to do that. I think this was a called stunt where Muhammad's trying to get upfield through the B gap. I just don't think you can do that against superior athletic quarterbacks, which has been shocking because look what they did to Lamar Jackson in week 3. And he's 4 levels above JJ McCarthy from an athleticism standpoint. But they totally contained and annihilated Lamar's ability to scramble. And how crazy is it to think that McCarthy is able to get outside the pocket and then Anzalone doesn't even touch him? I feel like, we watched that and we in disbelief, me personally at that time, in disbelief at what just occurred. The Montgomery fumble and then McCarthy, of all people, scrambling. He's a good athlete, don't get me wrong, but scrambling against this defense with their activity level, that one, it has to be put down as maybe a poor choice to call that stunt with Hutchinson and Muhammad on 3rd and 8, and then B, a really, really bad angle by Alex Anzalone.
So two things come to mind that I wanted to get your opinion on. Yesterday, Lions get 5 sacks. They produced, I think, a pressure rate around 48%. I think they had 24 pressures on the day. Do they need an edge rusher? Number one. Number two, one of my favorite sacks of the day on JJ McCarthy was none other than Lacey. Lacey, I mean, talk about a good angle. He ran a perfect angle to cut off McCarthy. I mean, he ran to the wide side of the field
Tough
from.
player.
I mean,
Tough.
my goodness. So we bring in a guy like Lacey off of what was it, the Seahawks practice squad or somewhere?
I
Unknown
think so.
guy, right? Unknown guy. Don't expect anything of him. Not many defensive ends his size or defensive tackles his size can make that play.
Playing
And
well.
yeah, I
Fits
thought
within the structure. Yeah.
exactly. So the Lions are pretty deep right now. I feel we're getting a couple of guys back. Davenport, which I know is not a lot of people's favorite player, but if they can keep him in a good rotation, he can probably last the rest of the season. AQM playing at a high level, and I think what a lot of fans don't understand is scheme. And sometimes maybe within the scheme, they don't understand that not every play they're meant to get after the quarterback. Do you think that our defensive line, the way it's constructed now, with the depth that we have now, is there any need to really go out and make a giant move at the trade deadline, knowing what you'd have to give up, a first round pick for Trey Hendrickson and a boatload of
I don't even
money?
think he's healthy now, is he? I don't
No,
think
he's not.
Hendrickson's
He's
even
not
playing.
healthy. That's
Yeah.
why I don't know his name
Yeah.
keeps popping up. Jalen Phillips is already gone. I think he's an Eagle now. I never expected
So is
that player.
everybody else.
Huh? What?
So is everybody else an Eagle. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's great
So,
for everybody.
and I know a lot of people compare the Lions, or Brad Holmes to Roseman, and how come he can, do all these things for the Eagles. Look, they won one Super Bowl recently. They won one, 10 years ago or whatever it was with Foles, and yeah, they've had some success, but all the other seasons that you go out and buy all these players, it's not like you're winning Super Bowls every year. It doesn't always work. So, edge or offensive line today? What makes the most sense is number one, and number two, um, is our defensive line playing well enough now to win us football games deep into the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, tough questions. My perspective or my background is probably a little bit skewed towards offensive line
Yeah.
because I've sat through the product the Ravens have put out there for the last year and a half with some of the best position player talent in the league, running backs, receivers, tight ends, Lamar Jackson, and a average to below average offensive line overall. I'm talking about film, what film shows. I'm not talking about PFF ratings or any other BS that nobody stamps their name on. You get a PFF rating, but who graded it? What's the name of the person who graded it, and how can we speak to them or post to them on Twitter and ask them about specific plays? You can't. So, but in any case, so after
I love
watching
it.
what we did, oh, you like that point, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I do.
Um, After watching that point on Sunday, that position on Sunday, the offensive line, I should say, it's difficult to say that you wouldn't like some O-line reinforcement. If you could find someone that was a hybrid guard tackle, I mean, how many of those are there, right?
Yeah, none.
And how many of them are available? Um, there's the guard for Washington that, of course, Seattle just played. I wonder if he'd be available. Of course, that's a weird situation because Detroit goes to Washington next week. So why would they trade with you at this point?
Right.
Um, I look at that guy as I can't even remember his name. I think 73 or maybe 74. Um, I look at him as someone that the Ravens could possibly go to acquire because our guard situation's terrible. It's like we have one guard every week, but it's a different guy. Some weeks our left guard plays well and our right guard sucks, and the next week it flips, and the following week they're both terrible. It's just I think in my defensive mind that an upgrade at pass rusher would absolutely help this defense. I think it would, however, the structure that Kelvin Shepard is using on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 is a different structure from what most other teams use. Looking back at that scramble by McCarthy, if you're in your what I refer to as 3+1 structure, where you're rushing 3 and you have a dedicated spy and a Derek Barnes, McCarthy doesn't scramble for that touchdown.
Right.
The difference is Anzalone's at depth. Anzalone's at 5 or 6 yards, and then he's coming downhill. There's too much space between him and McCarthy versus the 3. Let's do it this way. If you had played that coverage against the Ravens, Lamar Jackson probably runs for 110 yards
Mm-hmm.
because the spy, the second layer, is further back in this case against against the Vikings on McCarthy versus against the Ravens, that 3+1, Barnes is like at the line of scrimmage or even stepping across it, but not rushing, right? So there's less space there, and his angle is different. His angle is superior. So the structure of what Shepard doesn't necessarily play to a traditional four-man rush. We're lining up four, and here we come. Having said that, if you had a healthy Trey Hendrickson, look, you guys are not going to like me saying this. I understand that. He's just as good a pass rusher as Aiden Hutchinson, if not better.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
If I'm talking about from pure pass rush, if you're asking for 20 individual pass rushes in a game, now Hutchinson also gives you incredible play against the run, great effort. His range of impact, Hutchinson, far exceeds Hendrickson because of athleticism and change of direction skills. But just in pure pass rush situations, if you give me 20 pass rushes over the course of the game against the best tackles in the game, Hendrickson is just as good at Hutchinson or better in that specific aspect of the game.
So
So
I
if you
guess
had a
I
Hutchinson,
guess
you'd
well I
be
guess the question the question is, so you're making a push for the postseason right now. I
right.
get we could add anybody to this defensive line, it would make it better. But given the fact that the money situation, the Lions have $2.5 million next year. They need to sign a bunch of guys over the next 2 seasons, and you're now making a run, and you've got guys coming back like Pascal and Davenport. AQM and Aiden are top 5 in the league. They're getting pressure. They're the scheme that you speak about with Calvin Shepard is more linebacker play, which is what I think a lot of us expected. We're
Yeah.
getting a lot more pressure and blitzing from the linebackers to where they're taking the pressure off of the edge rusher to do all of the work. And we still have Tyleek Williams and
Yeah,
Lee
smart.
McNeil, right? So Lee McNeil's just now getting back. That's going to help put, an emphasis on the center of the defense to be able to get more pressure. So my question really was to make the push to kind of go all in. Without an offensive line, this team doesn't win. This team doesn't
Of course.
work.
Yeah,
So
of
would
course.
you
You want
go offensive line or would you go edge rusher if you had to sink some chips in right now to kind of go, to go the distance, not kind of, to make it to the
yeah,
Super Bowl this year?
if you could get Kevin Zeitler for a 4th round pick, then you do it.
Okay.
If you could get whatever the price tag should be, right? Whatever compared to what you're willing to forfeit versus what other teams are willing to forfeit, where you may have to increase the ante a little bit. Who knows?
What
Because
about Brandon Scherf?
Yeah, I mean he's retired though, right?
Yeah, can you pull him out of retirement? I don't know if he's in shape.
Who who knows? He's excellent. Scherf is a guy, when I watched the film of him in the offseason, very technical, excellent in the first 2 to 2.5 seconds of a play. There did seem to be this dynamic with him whereby the longer a play lasted, the less effective he was. And I don't know what that is, maybe age, who knows, but really good in the first 2 to 2.5 seconds of the play. He will execute his assignment, but oftentimes couldn't hold the bigger defensive lineman. I do wonder if you're in more of a zone scheme style now with this offensive line. Well, if everyone's healthy, I've suspected that Sewell was dealing with something for a couple of weeks because you would see 3 or 4 plays pop up over the course of a game that just didn't meet Sewell's standard. I mean, is it really
Yeah.
a possibility that he doesn't play this week?
I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know, man. Based on what Dan Campbell said, he doesn't know either.
That'd be a huge loss.
Yeah, well, it'd be extremely huge because Decker's hurt. Tate is supposed to play. Hageny's out. So you already have to fill one guard spot.
Right.
And then if you have to
Yeah.
fill both tackle spots too.
Tennessee's a fire sale. Obviously, they want to try to protect their quarterback, their number 1 pick that they're going to play for the rest of the season. They're obviously not going to sit him. So
I'd sit him.
you open yourself up for tremendous criticism as a Titans organization if let's say you trade away a quality offensive lineman like a Kevin Zeitler, and then Cam Ward gets hurt. God
Yeah.
forbid it's something against the guy who replaces Zeitler. So, there's some risk management there, I think, from the Titans' perspective. But Zeitler's probably retiring, it would be my guess. But hey, man, if you're Kevin Zeitler and someone comes to you every year for the next 2 or 3 years and offers $6 million or $8 million, you got to look at it. And he still plays at a really high level. I think he played well for Detroit last year.
Yeah, he did.
Absent,
He was one of the
you know,
best guards
may-
in the game.
yeah, maybe one game last year, I thought he was below the standard that we would have for him. the integration of him would be easy from a schematic standpoint, but obviously not from a positional standpoint because he's a dedicated right guard, and that's where Radledge has been playing. You could certainly move Zeitler to left guard for one game and try to get things coordinated there. It sucks, man, to see what happened to Mahogany. I do think Mahogany is a zone system guard. I'm not sure that he's a gap system guard. Um, but that's been a great pick for Brad Holmes. Everybody focuses on, the picks early in the draft. Man, that one was fantastic to be able to
Yeah.
get him in the 6th round. I continue to reflect on that one from a Ravens standpoint. He's Mahogany starts for us, probably last year in 2024 because
Hmm.
our guard play was terrible last year. So ultimately, to answer your question, I know it took me 10 minutes to do it. Yeah, offensive line is the bigger, more striking need right now because of the loss of Mahogany and then the 2 tackles and their health status. So you're not
Yeah.
facing the Minnesota Vikings this week. The Commanders' defense is awful,
Yeah, but you know
and
what?
I do mean
I
awful.
expected us to walk, all over Minnesota. I still expect a tight game because it's a divisional game. I expected the Lions to pull away and, and win in a fitting fashion, but I did not expect for us to go in and get our teeth kicked in. Because that's the way the score doesn't reflect it, but that's how this game went. We got our teeth kicked in
I
to
agree. The
to a
special
degree.
teams play was terrible.
Yeah.
Special teams play really hurt, gave them a short field multiple times. So, maybe that skews the yards per play or total yards stuff. But I still don't think McCarthy is a guy that, well, let's flip it. Let's put McCarthy in a situation where he's playing against a defense like his own and he has to throw the ball 37 times. He throws 3 or 4 picks,
Yeah.
you know, and
Thousand
and
percent.
and golf is able to raise the floor, if you will, in the worst case scenario, like you saw on Sunday. Maybe you'll be in another worst case scenario against Washington. I just watched that team at home on Sunday night against Seattle. Seattle could have beaten them 60-7. That is a really, really bad football team. And, of course, the tackles and Mahogany being out is a real issue. The quality of defense that Shepard's putting out there, and I do think Shepard's doing a really nice job for overall for the whole season. The quality of defense he's putting out there, you should be in a good situation to beat that team on Sunday. But obviously, the goals and the standards for Lions fans are much higher than going to Washington and beating a team that doesn't have Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Something's really happening with my PC right now. Things are froze out. I think I might lose you.
I still got you, but
Let me check on my phone. Like everything just went dark. Every time I go after 10 a.m., something happens, and so I'm wondering if I've got like something scheduled on the back end, like a hold on here.
pulling processing power.
Yep, I bet you there's something that's pulling me down because my
Yeah,
screen's froze out. I can't touch anything. So
I've had
it
issues with my tech for like about 3 weeks. I've been handed by a professional graphic designer. I've been handed like a tremendous upgrade for my channel, but I can't really run it because my primary laptop has been down for 3.5, 4 weeks. So
well
I get it, man.
there's the problem. I'll just be straight up with you. I bought a really really nice gaming laptop to get started with all this,
Of course.
and I was a waste of money. I built a really nice PC, and even though the PC's been great, it's the upgrades, it's the updates that have killed
Yeah.
me, from OBS or Microsoft. But building myself a PC was the smartest thing I ever did because now I have enough power to do whatever and to run 50
Yeah.
tabs all at once and
Yeah.
and have all this stuff going on and 6 screens if I want to. And anyway,
Well,
interesting stuff,
just
man. So Commanders, look, I thought that the Lions were going to walk in and beat the Vikings handily. It's at home. And again, I'm thinking, yeah, we should go in and beat the Viking or the Commanders this week, but geez, we're beat up and
yeah, understood.
we're beat
Understood.
up.
Yeah, absolutely. They are too. They are too. The you can cover them, they can't cover you.
Yeah.
I think that, John Morton's biggest issue now, besides the offensive line, that is the biggest issue. But the longest existing or persistent issue is inability to get Jameson Williams involved. And that's not Jameson Williams' fault. He's running his routes hard. He's blocking his tail off when they're asking him to. He's playing football like an unselfish guy. Yeah, social media posts, whatever. Like, I like the guy from what I see on the field, on the film, and that's all that really matters to me. They've got to find a way to get him the football. He's dangerous. And maybe golf is part of the issue because this is the last point I'll make, and I don't mean to be
No, you're good, brother.
alarming. I think I said this starting 3 weeks ago. The overwhelming majority of pass plays, particularly from the shotgun, golf gets the ball, immediately looks to St. Brown's side.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned this. I believe I mentioned this after the Bucks game, but I could be wrong. No, excuse me, after the Chiefs game. How often second level defenders were immediately on the snap. It's not like they were looking at golf. Oh, he's looking over there. Let me turn. No, they're instantly on the snap, turning and identifying St. Brown, basically taking away in breaking routes. And the Vikings did that, I think, 4 different times on Sunday that I have on film. There may have been others. I can't track individually every offensive play for Detroit and the Ravens, and let alone the Seahawks. I try to, but I fail every week. There's something there that he's got to get more diverse
Yeah.
with who the initial read is. And I don't know if that's Morton's fault, Goff's fault. I suspect it's a little bit of both. You can't blame Goff for trusting St. Brown. I've been trying to talk long enough for your computer to catch up to itself, by
Yeah,
the
we're
way.
good. I think I'm back.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so here's the thing. A couple good points. One from the chat here, and I know you probably got to get running too, but the biggest question is a lot of this communication issues with the offensive line. Is you think a lot of this is communication issues? And then the thing about JMO, I get it. Like if your progression is St. Brown, Gibbs, and then JMO, or St. Brown, Laporta, JMO, then Gibbs, whatever the progressions are, why can't we just make JMO the first read on a few options? I'm sure he is, but why not get him more involved early? Because what I've noticed is these late breaking routes by JMO have not been working this year. His depth of target at 17 yards versus last season at 12. I think that's the biggest reason why you want to get JMO early in the progression where he has
Get
his
him the
man
ball.
beat. He has his man beat
Yeah.
early, and then they catch up to him, whether they're switching off, from corner to safety. And again, without looking at film, how's the handoff working? Are they bracketing him? And so then the safety drops down and then he's covered again. And now you're, 2.5 seconds into the play. And so now you've moved off of that by the time you come back. And then he's opened up late when he beats the safety, but it's already too late because the ball's out or you're
I
sacked, you know?
No, totally agree. And the depth of target issue, the depth of the routes, maybe is a better way to say it. That's something that I've noticed, and I think I've even commented on in some of my videos.
Mm.
Some of the third and sixth plays, St. Brown will be the only route that is at, what you would describe as appropriate depth for the situation. Third and
Yeah.
six, St. Brown's route is, you know, between 5 and 8 yards, variable depending on the coverage and where he's fitting. And then you've got another route at like 12, and then Williams maybe running the clear out. That's consistent. I don't want to say consistent as in plus 50% of the time, but it's happening often enough that a rube like me notices it.
Yeah. Well,
And
same for me too. It's like, how are you going to get a first down when either the guys aren't running to the sticks. You see that happen far too many times. They're not even getting to the sticks at times. Or two, you're throwing the ball to somebody that's not at the sticks. Or three, they're so far out of the play, it's not even funny. You're not even giving yourself an option. Randall Smalls just dropped in a super chat. Says something that we did last year. When something was working, we kept doing it. This year, we used Laporta in the first drive, then barely used him the rest of the game. Yeah, you're right, man. And then in the fourth quarter, we picked him up again. And
you also look
it's
at
crazy to me.
to that point. What was the commenter's name again?
Rando.
Yeah, Rando. First, to that point, when the ball's on the right hash in Minnesota's structure, you're talking about an inside linebacker or an outside linebacker defending Laporta into the boundary. And early in the game, they exploited that, generally with the ball on the right hash, meaning the short side of the field is to the Lions' right, and that's where Laporta is, and there's no nickel DB over there. Whether they're in all that mug stuff or not, You have opportunities to get him the ball. In addition, something that I think sometimes older people, old school football guys, had things figured out that sometimes are forgotten somewhere along the way. A guy said this to me years ago when we had our best athlete at like a we were a run and shoot team essentially, so throwing the ball a ton. And our best player was like a 4-4 slot type guy. And this old school coach came out and he said, "Hey, he's got great speed and great agility, but it doesn't matter if you don't get him the ball. That 4-4 doesn't mean a damn thing if he's running without the football." And that's kind of how I feel about Jameson Williams. The depth of target issue, I'd be okay if on some 3rd and 8s, Jameson Williams' route was at 6
Yeah.
because I'd like to see him get the ball and run.
Yeah.
Um, he's a, I feel like he's an exciting player just to watch the game, but I also feel like there's an effect. Jameson Williams increases the ceiling of what this offense can do. They got to, maybe it's a golf issue. That touchdown late in the game against the Vikings, I wonder if Golf even attempts that throw in the first quarter. If he's willing to do so, or if he's more focused on let's keep the chains moving, let's keep possession, as many high percentage throws as possible, which is served Detroit well, and it will continue to do so from a golf perspective. But I do think Jameson Williams is a different cat. I'd like to see him get the ball more because I think, well, this week he's got tremendous matchup edges against Washington, no matter who guards him.
The thing for me is JMO, he needed to take a big step. I didn't have a lot of trust for JMO up until this year. Last year was nice to watch him break out a little bit, but I was a little bit concerned about his maturity level and then this year, man, we were super pumped, super excited. JMO really took a few steps and sounded great, acting professional, looked great in camp, and then it's like, well, where is he? We're not using him. And so he made significant strides in his game, his ability to potential have, big impact on the game. And to your point, yeah, I don't care if he runs a 4-2 or a 4-3 or 4-4. If you don't put the ball in his hands, it doesn't
Yep.
matter. Like that is one of the smartest takes that I've heard in a long time, that you got to get the guy the ball if you want some, for him to do something with it.
There's
So,
some there's something to be said about old school football guys, and
yeah.
sometimes myself included, we forget about some of the lessons from the past and things that old guys have learned. And I think 3 or 4 of us sat there and listened to him after practice, and I don't think anyone said anything for probably 90 seconds because we were like, "Whoa, this guy sat through one practice with us and just basically, deconstructed our whole operation in in an hour." So made things change thereafter. Jameson Williams not going to carry the ball from the backfield, maybe a jet sweep or so. Not a huge fan of the 3rd and 15 screen to him
Yeah.
on the second possession, maybe the third. I could be wrong. It's a different year for Detroit. I know. I still believe in this group. I do. I said this in my Lions Discord, I think last night, that I still believe in this group's ability to beat any team in the NFL. The quality of defense they're playing is good enough, in my opinion. I'd like to see a talent upgrade there, but man, the injuries on the offensive line have changed that. Probably changed that equation at this point. Hopefully, Brad Holmes gets something done to help this team out. But in
Yeah.
any case, I do have to get going here, Will. I'd love to join again.
Yeah,
Sorry for
you're more than
making it so
welcome
difficult
anytime. You know that. You
to
drop
get
me
in
a
touch with you.
line whenever you want to come on. Otherwise, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, we can always do the post weekend
Yeah,
breakdown. But you've been great, man. That was a long 15 minutes.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
all right.
Wednesdays is kind of tough. I record a podcast, excuse me, film study video slash podcast with a buddy of mine called Inside the Coverage. It's on the Ravens. We try to focus on their coverages. I would love to pull something like that off for the Lions. I just don't know when it would occur during the week. Probably on Tuesdays because my schedule. Otherwise, I run a tutoring business. I don't know if I've
Yeah.
told you,
No,
but
you've told me. Yeah.
it makes it I push as many appointments as I can to later on in the week and after school hours. So,
Are
but
you tutoring
Tuesday,
football? Because I'll sign up.
no, I thought about doing something like that in the off season one
You
time, but
should.
never got it off the ground.
Yeah,
So,
I'd love to help you, man. That'd be fun.
yeah,
And not that you'd use my knowledge because it'd
appreciate it.
be all you. But anyway,
It's all about effort level, and I've never felt like knowledge base is something that mattered. I used to do this every single year. Sorry, I'll let you go in a minute, but I totally have a different perspective than others about how much knowledge someone brings to a situation. It's desire and commitment. Every single year, we used to bring on a different parent coach, and
Mm.
people would tell me, "You're crazy. Why do you want parents coaching?" And I would say, "Hey, man, this is strategic. That guy over there, his son's a freshman, and he's got another son who's a sixth grader. Guess what? He's not going anywhere. So if I can teach him two drills this year, I'm
Yep.
talking about the coach,
Mhm.
about the dad. If I can teach him two drills this year, next year or by midseason, I'll add a third drill. Now I've basically replicated myself. I can move to another drill station and strategically orient my body so I can see him. And now I'm basically in two places at once because the only thing that dude knows is the drill that I showed him, you know. And so my point to what you just described, you basically ran yourself down a little bit, is don't do that because to me it's only about commitment,
Yeah.
availability, and desire. So, man, I wish we could produce something like that for the Lions. Maybe in the future I'll have more time, or we can come up with a machine that stops time for 3 hours and lets us produce it.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down